Hello, ni howdy. So, I recently watched Louis Theroux's Inside the Manosphere, and as a thought son, I had a few thoughts. Namely, the biggest being, I wish they dove a little bit deeper into the performance aspect of the Manosphere, because I truly do believe the performance is the most key integral part of this whole conversation. And so, since I have a camera and a microphone, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So, 400 years ago, Shakespeare wrote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts." Essentially saying life's a performance. We're all actors on the world stage. Sociologist Erving Goffman took Shakespeare's metaphor of life as theater and made a theory out of it. In social interaction, as in theatrical performance, there's a front region where performers are on stage in front of audiences, and then there's a backstage where they can prepare for their sets. They can just kind of chill out, be out of character. He treated the individual's use of role-playing as a unavoidable consequence of social equilibrium. In other words, to be social is to perform, or you have to perform to be social. Like when you're in a busy supermarket, there's a certain expected level of normalcy that you'd expect everybody to kind of adhere to. And then going a step deeper, Judith Butler, in their book Gender Trouble, takes Goffman's performance theory one step further, saying gender itself is a performance. It's something you do repeatedly until it feels or seems natural. Do I look like a cis hetero man because I am a cis hetero man? Or is it because I've chosen to portray myself as one? So we've established that everything is a performance, including gender. But why does any of this matter?
Louis Theroux, Inside the Manosphere.
The Into the Manosphere documentary.
Watch Inside the Manosphere.
Just watched Inside the Manosphere.
Performance has always existed, but it just used to be local. You performed for your village, your workplace, or the school huzz. But now, with the internet, the whole world has become your stage. But as globalization with the news, the internet, and social media has kind of taken over, now the whole world's our stage, essentially. And this makes me think about this one scene from 21 Jump Street where Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum's characters have to go undercover and infiltrate this high school. Tatum's character used to be the classic dumb popular jock that would beat up the softer, nerdier kids like Hill. And so Tatum took the lead, thinking his old theatrics would help them assimilate with the popular kids again. They start performing all the classic cool kid theatrics, like being a dick and teasing kids who take studying seriously. Much to their surprise, however, this behavior gets immediately clocked by the current generation of cool kids, who are actually into studying and have feelings and actually care about other people. Tatum, out of desperation and wanting to assert his dominance, punches one of the cool kids, who ends up turning out to be gay, so everyone thinks he committed a hate crime.
You punch me because I'm gay?
What? No, Oh, come on.
That's not cool, man.
Tatum ends up learning that what used to be considered cool is no longer, and Hill actually ends up becoming insanely popular under the new status quo. Coming back around to Louis Theroux's Inside the Manosphere, and in case you haven't seen it, it's a feature-length documentary where Louis Theroux investigates the rapidly growing, ultra-masculine online subculture known as the Manosphere. The film focuses on extremist influencers who push red pill ideology, misogyny, and traditional gender roles. They sell a performance of toxic masculinity to insecure young men and boys. Despite its misogyny and chauvinism, the Manosphere isn't actually about women. It's about men performing for other men's approval. For example, studies show men in groups are more likely to catcall than men alone. It's like a dick measuring contest. It helps to further portray oneself as masculine at the expense of objectifying women. Men who reported having engaged in catcalling demonstrated higher levels of hostile sexism, self-ascribed masculinity, social dominance orientation, and higher tolerances of sexual harassment, which, I mean, water is wet. Manosphere influencer TikkyTokky openly admits that he doesn't truly believe or live by many of the things that he tells his fans publicly. He says, "If I'd just done good things, I'd never really have blown up on social media in the first place." At the end of the day, it's all about clip farming and clout. So although he acknowledges there is a performative aspect to his character, if an actor plays a character for too long, At what point do they just become the character? And even more interesting, Theroux himself confirmed the on-off camera split in an interview with People magazine, saying that when HS is no longer streaming, he engages with his questions in a different way. He's composed, sincere, and fairly eloquent, much less performative. This goes back to the whole Goffman theory about front of stage and back of stage. Theroux continues on to say, some of it is sincere and deeply felt. Some of it is performed, but these creators are in a feedback loop with their audiences, constantly tailoring their content to see what gets engagement and adapting their behavior accordingly. The internet gave performance a global audience and a monetization layer, so it's not surprising that in a free market economy where we sell vibes and aesthetics, that masculinity itself has become a multi-billion-dollar product. Although it does beg the question, who's actually buying all of this shit? Going back to Jump Street, Tatum's character is toxic masculinity personified, whereas Hill's is a more progressive, healthy alternative. Manosphere influencers are performing a version of masculinity that made sense in some earlier cultural context, like being a provider, protector, dominant, unemotional, and selling it to young men as timeless truth. But the world has changed, and that performance is no longer as widely accepted. And this is a huge factor as to why I believe the dating scene is so messy right now. A lot of women have progressed socially and financially to the point where they no longer have to rely on a man as their only source of success. And thus women expect more from men, no longer accepting financial support as a trade-off for shitty behavior. However, a lot of men refuse to change or haven't learned how to change, and so they stick to what they know with the older, more traditional forms of toxic masculinity. And this is what's creating that dating disconnect. During large periods of change, there's always going to be those who are unwilling or unable to do so. And so many young men who feel they've been made victims of a cruel and feminist world search for salvation in the warm, wax chest of manfluencers. And when talking about the manosphere, I think it's important that we address the infamous male loneliness epidemic that gets thrown around a lot. 25% of young American men report daily loneliness, with this being the largest gap versus any peer wealthy country. 15% of men report having no close friends, which is up from the 3% from the 1990s. And the majority of Gen Z men also agree with the statement that no one really knows me well. And of course, this is sad to hear, but it's not a purely male crisis as the manosphere likes to portray it. Literally everyone is lonelier than they were a decade ago, but the manosphere has just told men that this is a uniquely them problem and they have a solution for it. I'm sorry to inform you, sir, but you have a rare sexually transmittable disease called ligma. Wait, what? Oh my god, how? It's hard to say, sir. Has your wife been sleeping with any better looking chads recently? Well, I mean, of course she has. Look at you. You're right. I am chopped. What should I do, doc? Well, I'm technically not supposed to be advertising this to patients yet because they're still going through test trials, but it's called the red pill. The red pill. That's right. Only real men can take it, but if you match as a good candidate, there's a high likelihood that you'll never see the world the same anymore, or at all. Eyesight loss is one of the side effects. Oh, and also not getting laid anymore. Ultimately, the performers on stage are preying on their audience's emotions and insecurities. It's also important to note that the audience isn't really buying masculinity itself, they're buying acceptance and community. They're seeking validation from other men whose masculinity is deemed exemplary by other men who are also seeking validation from other men. And it's a psychological codependency where the influencer needs constant validation to maintain his self-image, and the followers needs a figure to project strength onto. Each reinforces the other's illusion in this strange circle-jerk perpetual motion machine. So we've established the macro-mano-economics of this system, but I think it's time we dive a little bit deeper into the micro bits and motivations here. And speaking of micro, in the documentary, HS confronts his deadbeat father who is absent most of his life, leaving his single mother to take care of him. HS confides to Louis that there are no hard feelings. If there is any trauma there, it's subconscious. It's something he's definitely not aware of. And after the documentary came out, a parenting expert came out with a piece calling HS's behavior daddy issues.
But daddy issues? Like, what? Do I give off daddy issue vibes, boys? I really don't think I do, like, all jokes aside. A bit, really?
It's also worth noting that neighbors and family friends described young Harrison as a really lovely young lad and perfectly nice and polite, with one saying, "I don't recognize him anymore. He's like a different person." Also, side note, I can't see myself right now, so I can't tell if I'm like full-on shrimp mode for this entire video, but I feel like a shrimp. In The Will to Change, Bell Hooks writes that learning to wear a mask is the very first lesson patriarchal masculinity teaches the boy, for the word mask is already embedded in the word masculinity itself. The boy learns early that his core feelings cannot be expressed if they don't conform to what sexism defines as male. He is asked to give up his true self to realize the patriarchal ideal, to play the role of a man. Hooks calls this soul murder. To indoctrinate boys into the patriarchy, you force them to feel pain and deny their feelings simultaneously. This pent-up pain may be only expressed with the one emotion allowed to men: anger. Real men get mad, and their anger, however violent or violating, is deemed natural. It is a positive expression of patriarchal masculinity. Anger, she says, becomes the best hiding place for anyone to conceal pain or anguish of spirit. Boys victimized by patriarchal masculinity more often than not become patriarchal themselves, embodying the very abusive masculinity they once recognized as evil. Few men who are brutally conditioned in boyhood courageously resist. Most conform because conformity feels like survival. It can be dangerous to be different, and oftentimes even illegal. Hooks continues on to say, violence is boyhood socialization. The way we turn boys into men is through injury. We sever them from their mothers, from their feelings, from sensitivity to others. The phrase "be a man" means to suck it up and just keep going. Disconnection is not a byproduct of traditional masculinity. Disconnection is masculinity. So when HS said if there is trauma, that it's subconscious, I mean, yeah, he's describing the success of his own conditioning, the disconnection. He genuinely can't feel the very thing that's driving him to play the character that he plays. And he isn't the only one like this. It is crazy how many of these influencers were raised without dads or in tumultuous households. They were once young, hurt boys, taken in by the patriarchy and told how to perform as men. And when you look at their young followers, who are oftentimes asking for advice, they share the same wounds that they had. The same disconnection, searching for a script on how to be a man because nobody in their actual life taught them how to. The Manosphere finds these young boys and men at their most vulnerable and offers them a script and a costume. Dominance, stoicism, sexual power, big money bags, and contempt for the weak. The patriarchy shapes how men vote, who they blame, and what values they hold, ultimately deciding what kind of stage they'll perform on. At the end of the film, Tatum ends up becoming a chemistry nerd himself, embracing the very thing he brutalized 10 years prior. Unburdened by the dangers and expectations to perform masculinity a certain way, he realized he could do whatever he wanted to be, and found liberation, the freedom to be. Performance as liberation starts with the question, is this actually mine? Why do I do what I do? For how can we be certain of ourselves if we don't challenge ourselves? Like, how would you know if you like the Chili's molten lava chocolate cake if you've never had it, let alone been aware of its existence? And awareness, I believe, is the single most powerful tool for change. If more young men knew there was an alternative, I don't know if they would necessarily choose the alternative every time, but at least it would give them the power of choice. And that choice is the reason why I was able to become the man that I am today, for better or for worse. After all, life is a performance, and I hope we all get to play a character that we want to be. Hi again. So I just want to thank you for watching my first long-form video essay. This has been something I've been procrastinating on for like the past 2 years. Although I love making reels and TikToks and short-form content in general, I always kind of knew that I wanted to make these like longer, beefier essays. I was just always scared of doing so, imposter syndrome and all of that. So if you'd like to support me, considering this is now my full-time job, a like, comment, and subscribe will really help. External validation feels nice. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.